The workshop smelled of oil and burnt circuitry, a comforting aroma that Evan Cole had grown to love over his 15 years working as a mechanic on Station Meridian. The floating hub orbited between 3 star systems, a neutral zone where dozens of species traded, lived, and occasionally broke things that needed fixing. Evan wiped his hands on his grease-stained coveralls and glanced at the chronometer. Another slow day. The big ships usually went to the corporate repair bays with their gleaming tools and certified technicians. Evan got the leftovers, broken hover carts, malfunctioning translators, and the occasional desperate freighter captain who couldn't afford the premium rates. The door chimed, and 2 small figures shuffled inside. Evan looked down at the children, clearly aliens, though their species wasn't immediately obvious to him. They stood barely 3 feet tall, with iridescent skin that shifted between pale blue and soft violet. Their large eyes blinked in tandem, and delicate antennae protruded from their foreheads, drooping sadly. The girl clutched a mangled metallic creature in her arms, something that might have once been a mechanical pet. The boy held what looked like a miniature spacecraft, one wing completely torn off, exposing a tangle of wires. "Can you fix?" the girl asked in broken standard, her voice small and hopeful. Evan's heart softened immediately. He'd always had a weakness for kids, regardless of how many limbs or eyes they had. "Let me take a look," he said gently, kneeling down to their level. The girl, he'd learned later her name was Sari, handed over the mechanical creature with trembling hands. The boy Kale hesitantly offered the broken ship. Both children looked at him with such desperate hope that Evan knew he couldn't turn them away, regardless of whether they could pay. He carried the toys to his workbench and examined them under the light. The craftsmanship was exquisite, far beyond anything he usually encountered. The materials alone probably cost more than his monthly rent. These weren't cheap trinkets from a station vendor. Someone wealthy had commissioned these. "These are really well made," Evan said, glancing back at the children. "Where'd you get them?" The siblings exchanged glances and Sari spoke hesitantly. "Home, but we ran. Guards were mean. We just wanted to explore." Runaways, Evan thought. Probably from one of the wealthy districts. He'd seen it before. Rich kids rebelling against strict parents, sneaking off to see how the normal people lived. They'd return home eventually, once the adventure wore off. "Well, let's see what we can do," Evan said, pushing aside questions about payment. These kids looked scared enough already. He worked for 3 hours straight, carefully soldering microcircuits, replacing damaged actuators with parts from his limited inventory, and even fabricating a new wing component from scratch using his old 3D printer. The mechanical pet required particularly delicate work. Its neural processor had been partially crushed, and Evan had to reroute several pathways to get it functioning again. Sari and Kale watched in silent fascination, their antennae perking up as each repair progressed. Occasionally they whispered to each other in their native language, voices filled with growing excitement. Finally, Evan activated the mechanical creature. It whirred to life, stretched its metallic limbs, and nuzzled against Sari's hand. The girl's face lit up with pure joy. The spacecraft was next. When Evan powered it on, it hummed smoothly and lifted into the air, performing a perfect banking turn around the workshop. Kyle laughed, a melodic chiming sound, and caught it mid-flight. "Good as new," Evan announced, unable to suppress his own smile. "Maybe even better than new, honestly. I reinforced some of the weak points." "How much?" Sari asked, her expression falling as she clearly realized they might not be able to afford it. Evan waved his hand dismissively. "Don't worry about it. Consider it a favor, just try not to break them again, okay?" Before the children could respond, the workshop door burst open. 6 figures in ornate armor stormed inside, weapons drawn but not aimed. Behind them strode a tall, elegant alien with the same iridescent skin as the children, though her coloring was more silver than blue. She wore robes that seemed to shimmer with embedded technology, and a crown of crystalline structures floated above her head. Evan stood slowly, hands visible, his mind racing. He'd repaired toys for the wrong kids. "Sorry, Kyle," the woman cried, rushing past the guards to embrace the children. Her relief was palpable, her antennae wrapping protectively around them. The guards surrounded Evan, their weapons now definitely pointing his direction. "Wait," Sari shouted, pushing away from her mother. "He helped us. He fixed our toys." The woman, clearly royalty, Evan realized with a sinking feeling, looked at him properly for the first time. Her expression was unreadable. "You are the human who repaired the royal heirlooms?" she asked, her standard perfect and accented with authority. "I didn't know they were heirlooms," Evan managed. "They just looked like kids who needed help." The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. "Lower your weapons," she commanded the guards. They obeyed instantly. She approached Evan, her movements graceful and deliberate. "My children have been missing for 6 hours. We've searched every corner of this station. When we finally located them, they refused to return without their toys." She said the word with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. "These objects belong to their father, my late husband. They are priceless, both sentimentally and materially. I'm sorry I didn't—" "You fixed them," she interrupted. "When our own master craftsman said they were beyond repair. You asked for nothing in return. You treated my children with kindness when they were frightened and alone." She paused. Humanity's reputation for compassion, it seems, is not exaggerated. Evan felt his face flush. They were kids who needed help." The Queen reached into her robes and produced a data chip. "This contains a letter of recommendation to the Imperial Court, along with a grant sufficient to expand your workshop tenfold. You have earned the gratitude of the Celestian royal family." She pressed it into his hand. "More importantly, you've earned my personal thanks." Sari and Kyle rushed forward, hugging Evan's legs. "Will you visit us?" Kale asked. Evan looked at the Queen, who nodded. "You would be welcome in the palace any time, Mr. Cole." As the royal family departed, Evan stood alone in his workshop, holding a data chip worth more than he'd earned in a lifetime, and realized that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness created the biggest ripples across the galaxy.